The champagne flute slipped from my fingers the moment I realized my wife had vanished with my childhood best friend during our vow renewal ceremony. I'm Mark Bishop, 42 years old, architect at Redmond Development, and apparently the biggest fool in Vermont. Standing at the altar of the Mountain Vista Lodge, watching 200 guests shift uncomfortably in their seats, I felt like an extra in someone else's nightmare movie. "Where's Simone?" whispered Father Martinez, glancing at his watch. We'd been waiting 23 minutes. In wedding time, that's an eternity. "Bathroom emergency," I lied, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. The guests were starting to murmur. Simone's mother kept checking her phone. My boss, CEO Adam Redmond, looked irritated. He'd flown his entire executive team up from Boston for this weekend. Simone Bishop, my wife of 15 years, real estate agent extraordinaire, master manipulator disguised as the perfect suburban wife. Blonde, charming, always the center of attention. She'd insisted on this vow renewal, claiming we needed to reaffirm our commitment after my recent promotion. I should have known something was wrong when she invited Eric Dorsey. Eric, my supposed best friend since childhood, successful lawyer, snake in an Armani suit. He'd been acting strange all weekend, too helpful, too present, always appearing whenever Simone needed something. "I'll go find her," I announced, stepping down from the altar. The relief in the crowd was palpable. Helena Redmond, Adam's ex-wife, caught my eye from the third row. She raised an eyebrow, a look that said she'd seen this movie before. I checked the bridal suite first. Empty. Simone's phone lay on the vanity, buzzing with notifications. I grabbed it, scrolling through messages from her gossip circle. Jenna, Alana, Quinn. Nothing unusual, just typical female chatter about dresses and flowers. The lodge felt massive suddenly, all dark wood and hunting trophies staring down at me. I wandered the halls like a lost tourist, checking every bathroom, every alcove. Other guests had started their own search parties. This was becoming a spectacle. "Mark!" Adam Redmond's voice boomed behind me. My boss approached with his usual commanding presence. 6'2", silver hair, expensive suit. "What's the situation?" "Just a small delay," I said, but my voice cracked slightly. "You know how women are about their makeup." Adam studied me with those sharp business eyes that had built a real estate empire. "Son, I've been married 3 times. This isn't makeup." That's when I saw them. Through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, I spotted Eric's black BMW in the parking lot. The engine was running. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. I sprinted outside, Adam following. The car was empty, keys still in the ignition. Eric's jacket lay crumpled in the back seat, and there was Simone's purse beside it. "What the hell?" Adam muttered. I grabbed Eric's jacket, searching the pockets. His phone, wallet, and a folded piece of hotel stationery. My hands shook as I unfolded it. "Mark, it's for the best. Don't look for me. The papers are in the safe deposit box." S. The world tilted. 200 guests waiting inside, my entire professional network watching, and my wife had just abandoned me with a Dear John letter hidden in my best friend's jacket. "Jesus Christ," Adam said, reading over my shoulder. "Mark, I'm sorry." But I wasn't processing his sympathy. My architect's brain was analyzing, calculating. The timeline didn't make sense. Eric's car was here, but where were they? How long had they been gone? "I need to see the security footage," I said. Adam nodded grimly. "I'll talk to management." 20 minutes later, we sat in the lodge's security office with Dave, the weekend manager. The monitors showed multiple camera angles of the lobby, parking lot, and stairwells. "There," Dave pointed to a timestamp. 2:47 p.m. "Your wife and the gentleman in the blue suit entered stairwell B." We watched Simone and Eric disappear into the stairwell that led to the guest room floors. The timestamp in the corner kept rolling. 2:47, 2:48, 2:49. "When did they come out?" I asked. Dave fast-forwarded. 3:15 p.m., 3:30 p.m., 3:45 p.m. "Here," he said, stopping at 4:23 p.m. Simone emerged first, hair disheveled, dress wrinkled. Eric followed 30 seconds later, straightening his tie. 96 minutes. They'd been in that stairwell for 96 minutes while I stood at the altar like an idiot. "That's not a bathroom emergency," Adam said quietly. The security footage was timestamp perfect evidence of betrayal. My wife and best friend, captured in digital clarity, disappearing together while our friends and family waited for a ceremony that would never happen. I stared at the frozen frame showing Simone's guilty face as she emerged from the stairwell. Her lipstick was smeared. Eric's shirt was untucked. "I want copies of this footage," I said. "Mark," Adam started. Maybe you should... I want copies, I repeated, my voice harder now. All of it, every angle. Dave looked uncomfortable. Sir, I'm not sure about privacy laws. My wife just humiliated me in front of 200 people, I said. Privacy is off the table. Adam nodded at Dave. Give him what he needs. As the files transferred to my flash drive, I felt something cold settling in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was calculation. Planning. The same methodical thinking I used to design buildings, now focused on a very different kind of construction project. What are you going to do? Adam asked as we walked back to the lobby. The guests had mostly dispersed, heading to the bar or their rooms. The altar still stood decorated with white flowers and shattered dreams. I could hear Simone's mother crying somewhere. I'm going to find out exactly what my wife has been up to, I said, and then I'm going to make sure everyone knows. Helena Redmond appeared beside us, martini in hand. Need some advice from someone who's been through a very public divorce? I looked at her. Adam's ex-wife, 50 years old, elegant, sharp as a blade. She'd taken half of Adam's empire in their split, and somehow they'd remained friends. That took skill. What kind of advice? I asked. The kind that involves making your cheating spouse regret every decision that led to this moment, she said, taking a sip of her drink. I assume you're not the forgive and forget type? Not anymore. Helena smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Good. Meet me in the bar in an hour. Bring that footage. As she walked away, Adam shook his head. Mark, Helena's dangerous when she wants to be. Good, I said, watching my ruined altar. So am I. The lodge felt different now. Not like a romantic getaway, but like a war room. Simone and Eric had started something they clearly hadn't thought through. They'd humiliated me publicly, destroyed 15 years of marriage, and betrayed friendships that went back decades. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the quiet, methodical architect who'd spent his entire career turning blueprints into reality. Time to draft some new plans. The lodge bar felt like a confessional booth at midnight. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the kind of atmosphere where secrets got traded like currency. I'd spent the last hour reviewing the security footage on my laptop, memorizing every timestamp, every damning detail. Helena Redmond sat across from me, nursing her second martini. She'd changed from her ceremony dress into dark jeans and a black sweater. War clothes, I realized. Show me, she said simply. I turned the laptop screen toward her and hit play. We watched in silence as Simone and Eric entered the stairwell at 2:47 p.m. Helena's expression didn't change, but her grip tightened on her glass. 96 minutes, I said when the footage ended, while 200 people waited for a ceremony that was never going to happen. Amateurs, Helena muttered. If you're going to destroy a marriage, at least have the courtesy to do it privately. You sound like you speak from experience. Oh, Adam cheated with his secretary for 2 years before I found out. The difference is, he had the decency to look guilty about it. She finished her martini. Your wife looks satisfied. That was the worst part. In the footage, Simone's face showed no remorse, no guilt, just the smug satisfaction of someone who'd gotten away with something. There's more, I said, pulling out Eric's phone. I grabbed this from his jacket. He never changed his passcode, still uses his birthday. Helena leaned forward as I scrolled through Eric's messages. Most were work-related, but then I found the thread with Simone. Weeks of texts, increasingly intimate, planning meetings at various hotels. The Riverside Inn, room 237, usual time, Helena read aloud. Mark's working late again, perfect opportunity. She looked up at me. How long has this been going on? Based on these messages? At least 3 months? I scrolled further back. Look at this one from 6 weeks ago. The Riverside property is perfect for our project. Eric says he can handle the legal paperwork. Property deals. Helena's eyes sharpened. What kind of property deals? I'd been wondering the same thing. Simone was a residential real estate agent, but these messages referenced commercial properties, development deals, investment opportunities that seemed way above her usual suburban house sales. I think they're running some kind of side business, I said, using their affair as cover for financial arrangements. Helena was quiet for a moment, studying the phone screen. Then she smiled, that same dangerous expression from earlier. Mark, I think your wife and your friend have been very, very stupid. What do you mean? I mean, I recognize some of these property addresses. They're all in areas where Adam's company has been looking to expand. If Simone's been feeding inside information to Eric, and he's been using it for competing bids... She trailed off, but the implication was clear. Corporate espionage. Real estate fraud. Suddenly this wasn't just about adultery. It was about money. Serious money. I need to make some calls, Helena said, standing up. There's someone you should meet tomorrow, a private investigator I used during my divorce. If there's more to find, Janet will find it. Helena, why are you helping me? She paused, considering the question. Because I know what it feels like to be blindsided by someone you trusted, and because Adam still talks about you, says you're the most thorough architect he's ever worked with. If half of what he says is true, you're going to make this very interesting. After she left, I sat alone in the bar, staring at the evidence spread across the table. Security footage, phone records, cryptic messages about property deals. My wife hadn't just cheated, she'd been running a con game. The bartender, a guy named Mike, who looked like he'd heard every sob story in the book, refilled my bourbon without being asked. Rough day? He said. My wife disappeared with my best friend during our vow renewal ceremony. Mike whistled low. That's a new one. Usually it's the groom who gets cold feet. Usually, I agreed. Mike, you've worked here long, right? Seen a lot of wedding parties? 5 years. Why? Ever notice anything strange about guests who book multiple rooms but only use some of them? Or couples who aren't actually couples? Mike glanced around, making sure we were alone. You mean like affairs? Happens more than you'd think, especially with the business crowd. They book rooms for their wives, then use them for their girlfriends. What about real estate people? Anyone been asking questions about local property values, development plans? Funny you mention that. Mike leaned closer. Your wife was in here Thursday night with that lawyer guy, talking to some investors from Boston. They were asking a lot of questions about the lodge's expansion plans, what other developments were planned for the area. My blood went cold. What kind of questions? Stuff about zoning permits, environmental impact studies, which properties might be available for purchase, the kind of inside information that would be worth a lot of money to the right people. I pulled out my phone and showed him Eric's photo. This the lawyer? That's him, and he was taking notes the whole time. The pieces were falling into place. Simone and Eric weren't just having an affair, they were using their relationship to run an information-gathering operation. Simone had access to real estate market data, Eric had legal connections, and together they were selling insider information to competing developers. The worst part? They were probably using information from Adam's company, my employer, to undercut his business deals. I finished my bourbon and gathered the evidence. Tomorrow I'd meet with Helena's private investigator and start building a case. But tonight, I had one more stop to make. The lodge's business center was empty at 11 p.m. I logged into my work email and started searching through the last 6 months of project files, looking for any correlation with the properties mentioned in Eric's messages. What I found made me sick. 3 major development projects that Adam's company had lost in the past 4 months, all to competitors who had somehow known exactly what to bid, exactly what environmental concerns to address, exactly which permits would be required. Simone had been in our house during every one of those deals, listening to my phone calls, reading documents I'd brought home, gathering intelligence while playing the supportive wife. I printed everything, emails, project timelines, bid documents. By the time I finished, I had a stack of evidence that painted a clear picture of corporate espionage and real estate fraud. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mark, it's Helena. Meet me at the Riverside Inn tomorrow at 10 a.m., room 237. Time to see what else your wife has been up to. H, room 237. The same room number from Simone's messages with Eric. I smiled for the first time in 12 hours. My cheating wife and backstabbing best friend thought they were so clever, but they'd left a trail of evidence that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Tomorrow, the real investigation would begin, and by the time I was finished, Simone and Eric would regret every lie, every betrayal, every moment they'd spent thinking they were smarter than the quiet architect they'd underestimated. The game was just beginning. Room 237 at the Riverside Inn looked like a crime scene waiting to happen. Helena stood in the doorway wearing latex gloves and holding a small camera, while a woman I didn't recognize knelt beside the bed with what appeared to be a forensics kit. Mark, meet Janet Morrison, Helena said. Best private investigator in New England, and the reason I got 70% of Adam's assets instead of 50. Janet looked up from her work. Mid-40s, gray hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a Red Sox t-shirt. She could have been anyone's aunt, which I suspected was exactly the point. Your wife and her boyfriend have been busy, Janet said, standing up. I've been here since 8 a.m., and this room tells quite a story. She handed me a folder thick with photographs and documents. They've been using this room twice a week for the past 2 months. Always Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, always paid for in cash by your friend Eric. I flipped through the photos. Hotel receipts, credit card records, phone logs. Janet had reconstructed their entire affair timeline with military precision. But here's the interesting part, Janet continued. They weren't just meeting for intimacy. Look at this. She showed me photos of the hotel desk, covered with real estate documents, property surveys, and what looked like architectural plans. I talked to housekeeping. The cleaning lady, Maria, says they always left papers scattered around, sometimes had other people visiting, men in expensive suits carrying briefcases. Business meetings, Helena said. They were running a full operation out of this room. Janet nodded. I've identified at least 6 other individuals who visited this room during their meetings, all connected to competing development companies, all with interests in properties where your employer was bidding. The scope of their betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just adultery, it was organized corporate espionage. There's more, Janet said, pulling out another folder. I ran financial checks on both of them. Eric's been depositing large cash payments into a separate account, amounts that don't match his legal practice income, and your wife has been making investments in properties using information that wouldn't be public knowledge. She showed me bank statements, investment records, property purchase agreements. Simone had bought 3 parcels of land in the past month, all in areas where Adam's company was planning major developments. How much money are we talking about? I asked. Conservative estimate? They've made about $400,000 in the past 6 months, with another $2 million in pending deals. I sat down hard on the hotel room chair. My wife and best friend hadn't just betrayed me personally. They'd been stealing from my employer, manipulating real estate markets, and running what amounted to an organized crime operation. The question is, Helena said, what do you want to do about it? I thought about that morning's humiliation, standing at the altar while 200 people watched my marriage collapse. I thought about 15 years of trusting Simone, 20 years of friendship with Eric, all of it built on lies. I want to destroy them, I said quietly. Completely, publicly. I want them to lose everything. Janet smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say, because I have a plan. She spread out a timeline on the hotel desk, a detailed schedule of Simone and Eric's activities, their business meetings, their financial transactions. They're getting sloppy, Janet explained. Overconfident. This Thursday, they have a meeting here with investors from a Chicago development firm. Big money, probably their largest deal yet. How do you know? Because I've been monitoring Eric's phone calls. They're planning to sell information about Adam's next major project, the Riverside Valley development. $200 million deal, biggest thing your company has ever attempted. My blood went cold. The Riverside Valley project was Adam's baby, his attempt to build a sustainable community that would cement his company's reputation. I'd been working on the architectural plans for 8 months. They're going to sell my designs, I said. Not just your designs, Helena added. Environmental impact studies, zoning approvals, financial projections, construction timelines, everything needed to submit a competing bid. When's the meeting? I asked. Thursday at 2 p.m. Same room, same routine. Janet looked at me seriously. If we're going to stop them, we need to act fast. I stood up, my mind racing through possibilities. What if we don't stop them? Helena raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? What if we let the meeting happen, but we control what information they're selling? Janet's eyes lit up. You want to feed them false information. Better than that. I want to give them information that will destroy their credibility and expose their entire operation. I started pacing, my architect's brain shifting into planning mode. If they're selling my designs, I can modify those designs. Give them plans with fatal flaws, environmental studies with false data, financial projections that don't add up. And when the Chicago investors try to use that information, Helena was following my logic. They'll discover they've been sold worthless garbage. They'll come looking for refunds, and when they do, they'll expose the entire network. Janet was nodding enthusiastically. It's elegant. Instead of just catching them in the act, we're setting them up to destroy themselves. But we need more than just fake documents, I said. We need evidence of the entire conspiracy, recorded proof of what they're doing. Leave that to me, Janet said. I can wire this room with audio and video equipment, get everything on record. Helena was studying the timeline. There's something else to consider. Adam's wedding is this Saturday. Every major player in the New England real estate market will be there, including some of the people who've been buying information from Simone and Eric. Perfect, I said. We let them complete their Thursday transaction with fake information, then we expose the entire operation at Adam's wedding. Maximum publicity, maximum damage. You want to humiliate them in front of the entire industry, Janet said. I want to end their careers, I corrected. Both of them, permanently. We spent the next 2 hours planning every detail. Janet would modify the hotel room surveillance. I would prepare the false documents, and Helena would coordinate the revelation at Adam's wedding. "One more thing," Helena said as we prepared to leave. "What about your marriage? Legally, I mean." I thought about Simone's note. About 15 years of what I now realized had been elaborate deception. "My marriage ended the moment she walked into that stairwell with Eric," I said. "Everything after this is just paperwork." "Good," Helena said, "because after Saturday she's going to need a very good lawyer, and Eric's going to be too busy defending himself to help her." As we left the Riverside Inn, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of a perfect plan coming together. Simone and Eric thought they were master manipulators, but they'd made one crucial error. They'd betrayed an architect. And architects don't just build structures, we design systems. Complex interconnected systems where every component serves a purpose, where every detail matters, where one small flaw can bring down the entire construction. By Thursday, I'd have their entire operation mapped out like a blueprint. By Saturday, I'd demolish it with the same precision I used to design buildings. Simone and Eric wanted to play games with people's lives and careers? Fine. But they were about to learn that some games have consequences they never saw coming. Thursday morning, I sat in my office at Redmond Development, staring at architectural plans that would never be built. At least, not the way they appeared on paper. I'd spent the previous 2 days creating the most elaborate deception of my career. Modified versions of the Riverside Valley development plans that looked perfect on the surface, but contained fatal flaws that would bankrupt anyone stupid enough to try building them. Foundation specifications that wouldn't support the proposed structures. Environmental impact studies that ignored a protected wetland area. Zoning classifications that didn't exist. Financial projections based on construction costs from 1995. Any competent architect would spot the problems immediately, but investors looking for a quick score might not notice until they'd already committed millions of dollars. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Equipment installed. Audio and video recording active. They're scheduled to arrive at 1:45 p.m. Perfect. In 3 hours, Simone and Eric would walk into room 237 and sell my fake plans to investors from Chicago, creating recorded evidence of corporate espionage and fraud. "Mark?" Adam Redmond appeared in my office doorway, looking concerned. "You've been working late every night this week. Everything okay?" I looked up at my boss, the man whose business my wife and best friend had been systematically sabotaging for months. He deserved to know the truth, but not yet. The trap wasn't ready. "Just making sure the Riverside Valley plans are perfect," I said. "You know how important this project is." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Adam closed the door and sat down. "I've been hearing rumors. Competitors seem to know details about our projects before we announce them publicly. Details that should be confidential." My stomach tightened. "What kind of details?" "Environmental studies, zoning applications, construction timelines, information that could only come from inside our company." His eyes were sharp, evaluating. "Mark, I need to ask, have you shared any project information with anyone outside the company?" The irony was suffocating. Adam suspected me of the crimes my wife was actually committing. "No," I said carefully. "I've never shared confidential information with anyone." "What about your wife? She's in real estate, right? Ever discuss our projects at home?" I thought about all those evenings when Simone had asked innocent questions about my work, encouraging me to talk through problems, offering to listen when I was stressed about deadlines. Every conversation had been intelligence gathering. "I may have mentioned some general details," I admitted. "Nothing specific." Adam nodded slowly. "I'm not accusing you of anything, Mark, but if there's a leak in our company, I need to find it before the Riverside Valley project is compromised." "You will," I said, "very soon." After Adam left, I printed the final versions of my fake documents and sealed them in an envelope marked Riverside Valley Confidential. Then I drove to the Riverside Inn and left the package at the front desk, addressed to room 237. Janet was waiting in the lobby, disguised as a businesswoman reading a newspaper. She nodded slightly as I walked past. Everything was ready. At 1:47 p.m., I watched from my car as Eric's BMW pulled into the parking lot. He got out first, looking around nervously, then opened the passenger door for Simone. She emerged wearing a business suit I'd never seen before, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly salary. They looked like successful professionals heading to a legitimate business meeting, the perfect cover for corporate espionage. My phone buzzed with updates from Janet. "They're in the room, opening the package now." 2 other men just arrived, expensive suits, Chicago plates on their rental car. "Meeting has started. Audio is clear." I sat in my car, listening to my own heartbeat, knowing that 1 floor above me, My wife was selling stolen information that would destroy her career and possibly send her to prison. Part of me felt sick about what I was doing. 15 years of marriage, 20 years of friendship with Eric, all ending with surveillance equipment and falsified documents. But then I remembered standing at that altar, watching 200 people realize that my wife had abandoned me for another man. I remembered the security footage of Simone emerging from the stairwell with her lipstick smeared and her dress wrinkled. I remembered the bank statements showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in profits from their betrayal. My phone buzzed again. Transaction complete. They just sold your fake plans for $150,000 cash. Chicago investors are very happy. Everyone shaking hands. Eric and Simone staying behind for celebration drinks. Other men leaving. Perfect audio recording of the entire transaction. We have everything. I started my car and drove back to the office. Tomorrow was Adam's wedding, and every major player in the New England real estate industry would be there, including, I was certain, some of the people who'd been buying stolen information from my wife and best friend. The trap was set. The evidence was recorded. All that remained was the public execution. That evening, I sat in my empty house. Simone still hadn't come home, and reviewed Janet's preliminary report. Audio transcripts, video screenshots, financial records, a complete documentation of corporate espionage. But as I read through the evidence, I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't their first fake transaction. According to the recorded conversation, Simone and Eric had been selling modified information for weeks, giving some buyers real intelligence while feeding others worthless data, playing competing companies against each other in an elaborate shell game. They weren't just thieves. They were criminal masterminds running a sophisticated fraud operation that had manipulated millions of dollars in real estate deals. And tomorrow, at Adam's wedding, I was going to destroy them in front of everyone who mattered in their professional lives. My phone rang. Helena's number. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than expected. We have everything we need." "Good. Because I've been making calls, and you're not going to believe what I found out." "What?" "Remember Quinn, Eric's wife? She's been asking questions, too. Apparently Eric's been acting strange for months, working late, making mysterious phone calls, depositing cash into accounts she doesn't know about." I'd forgotten about Quinn and all of this. Eric's wife of 12 years, a kindergarten teacher who'd trusted her husband the same way I'd trusted mine. "She deserves to know the truth," I said. "She's going to be at the wedding tomorrow. I think she should hear the recordings." "Helena, when this comes out tomorrow, it's going to destroy a lot of people." "Good," she said firmly. "People who lie and cheat and steal deserve to be destroyed. The question is, Al, are you ready to be the one who does it?" I thought about that question as I hung up the phone. Was I ready to publicly humiliate my wife and best friend? Was I ready to end their careers, their reputations, possibly their freedom? Then I looked at the security footage still playing on my laptop. Simone and Eric disappearing into that stairwell while I waited at the altar like a fool. Yes, I was ready. Tomorrow, at Adam Redmond's wedding, the real vow renewal would begin. Not a ceremony celebrating love and commitment, but a reckoning that would show everyone exactly what my wife and best friend were really worth. The game was almost over. Time for the final move. Adam Redmond's wedding reception at the Ocean View Country Club was everything my vow renewal wasn't. Elegant, flawless, and proceeding exactly according to plan. 250 guests, including every major real estate developer, architect, and investor in New England, celebrating the marriage of my boss to his much younger third wife. I stood at the bar, wearing my best suit and a smile that felt carved from stone, watching Simone work the crowd 30 feet away. She'd finally come home the night before, acting as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't abandoned me at our vow renewal to have sex with my best friend in a hotel stairwell. "You look nervous," Helena said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. She wore a stunning black dress that probably cost more than my car, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd survived her own public divorce. "I'm about to destroy my wife's life in front of half the real estate industry," I said quietly. Nervous doesn't begin to cover it. "Having second thoughts?" I watched Simone laugh at something one of the investors was saying, her hand resting on his arm in that practiced way she had of making men feel important. Even now, even knowing what she'd done, she was working angles, building connections, probably gathering information for her next scheme. "No second thoughts," I said. Eric appeared at Simone's side, and I felt my jaw clench involuntarily. He wore an expensive navy suit and that easy smile that had charmed teachers, girlfriends, and apparently my wife for the past 20 years. They looked like the perfect power couple, successful, attractive, completely untouchable. Janet's in position, Helena murmured, nodding toward the DJ booth where a woman in catering clothes was adjusting audio equipment. She's got the recordings ready to play through the sound system. And Quinn? Eric's wife is at table 12, still completely clueless. This is going to hit her hard. I felt a moment of guilt thinking about Quinn, but it passed quickly. She deserved to know the truth about her husband, just like I deserved to know the truth about my wife. Adam took the microphone for his wedding toast, and the crowd quieted. Thank you all for being here to celebrate this wonderful day. Before we continue with dinner, I wanted to address something that's been troubling me lately. This wasn't part of the plan. Helena and I exchanged glances. Over the past few months, Adam continued, my company has lost several major contracts to competitors who seem to have inside information about our projects. Today, I learned exactly how that information was being stolen. The room went completely silent. Simone's face went pale. Eric started looking toward the exits. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to hear a recording made yesterday at the Riverside Inn, room 237. Janet activated the sound system, and suddenly Eric's voice filled the country club. The environmental impact study shows protected wetlands in Section 12, but Redmond's company doesn't know about them yet. If your people file the permits first, you'll have exclusive development rights to the entire area. Simone's voice followed. Mark's been working on the architectural plans for 8 months. These blueprints show every detail. Foundation specifications, construction timelines, material costs, worth at least $2 million in saved development time. The crowd erupted, voices raised, chairs scraping, people standing to get a better look at Simone and Eric, who were now trapped in the center of the room like animals in a cage. But the recording continued. This is our biggest score yet. Once we sell these Riverside Valley plans, we'll have enough money to disappear completely. Mark will never figure out what happened. Eric's voice again. What about Quinn and your husband? Simone's laugh was cold, cruel. They're both too stupid to catch us. Mark's been bringing work home for months, talking about projects, leaving documents on his desk. It's like taking candy from a baby. The recording ended, leaving the country club in stunned silence. Then Adam spoke again. The plans they sold yesterday were fakes, created by my head architect specifically to expose their operation. The FBI has been notified, and warrants have been issued for their arrest. That was my cue. I walked to the center of the room, stopping directly in front of Simone and Eric. Hello, wife, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. How was your business meeting yesterday? Simone's face cycled through shock, fear, and finally rage. Mark, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I pulled out my phone and showed her the security footage from our vow renewal. 96 minutes in a hotel stairwell while I waited at the altar. Very romantic. Eric tried to step forward. Mark, let me explain. Explain what? I turned to face my former best friend. How you've been stealing from my employer. How you've been sleeping with my wife. How you've been running a criminal enterprise out of a hotel room. The crowd pressed closer, phones out, recording everything. This would be on social media within minutes, in the newspapers by tomorrow morning. You want to know the best part? I continued, my voice carrying across the silent room. The plans you sold yesterday were completely worthless. Foundation specs that won't support the buildings, environmental studies that ignore protected wetlands, zoning classifications that don't exist. Your Chicago buyers are going to be very unhappy when they try to use that information. Eric's face went white. You bastard. No, I said calmly. I'm the husband you betrayed and the employee you stole from. You're the bastard. That's when Eric snapped. He lunged at me, swinging wildly, but I'd been expecting it. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him into a table full of champagne glasses. He went down hard, covered in alcohol and broken glass. The crowd gasped, but I wasn't finished. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, I'd like you to meet my wife, Simone Bishop, real estate agent and corporate spy, and Eric Dorsey, attorney and fraud specialist. Together, they've stolen approximately $400,000 in the past 6 months by selling confidential information about development projects. I pulled out a folder and scattered documents across the floor. Bank records, property purchases, hotel receipts, phone records. Everything's documented. Every transaction, every meeting, every betrayal. The FBI will be very interested in your client lists. Simone finally found her voice. You bastard. You planned this whole thing. Yes, I said simply. Just like you planned to steal from my employer and humiliate me at our vow renewal. The difference is, my plan worked. Security guards appeared. Real ones, not hotel staff. FBI agents in suits, moving through the crowd with practiced efficiency. Simone Bishop, Eric Dorsey, You're under arrest for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. As they read the Miranda rights, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete satisfaction. Not happiness, exactly, but the deep contentment that comes from a job perfectly executed. Helena appeared beside me as they led Simone and Eric away in handcuffs. "How do you feel?" she asked. I watched my wife and former best friend disappear through the country club doors, their lives and careers destroyed, their freedom about to be taken away. "Like I just finished the most important architectural project of my life," I said. The crowd was dispersing, guests talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. Quinn Dorsey sat alone at table 12, crying quietly as the reality of her husband's betrayal sank in. Adam approached, his wedding somewhat overshadowed by the dramatic arrests. "Mark, I owe you an apology, and probably a promotion." "Just doing my job," I said, "protecting the company's interests." "By destroying your own marriage?" I thought about that question as the FBI agents finished collecting evidence from the scattered documents. "My marriage was already destroyed," I said finally. "I just made sure everyone knew it." As the evening wound down, Helena and I sat at the bar, watching the last guests filter out of the country club. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I go home to an empty house, file for divorce, and try to rebuild my life." "Sounds lonely." I looked at her. Adam's ex-wife, sharp and dangerous and completely unafraid of the consequences of her actions. "Maybe," I said, "but at least it'll be honest." Helena smiled and raised her glass. "To honest lives and dishonest spouses getting exactly what they deserve." We clinked glasses as the last of the FBI agents left with boxes of evidence that would ensure Simone and Eric spent the next few years in federal prison. My wife had disappeared with my childhood best friend during our vow renewal, thinking she was so clever, so untouchable. She was wrong.